Hello, this is Michelle Martin Dobbins. Welcome to another episode of Adventures in Alchemy, and we are in that reboot. So if you didn't catch the few episodes before this one, we're turning towards more of the magic and always including the spiritual alchemy, positive thought, law of attraction, but really putting more of the magical elements out there in this podcast. So today I want to talk to you about microdosing and macrodosing. And I was going to say not in the fun way that you think of automatically, which is those are terms used in mostly like the hallucinogenic drug community. But I am going to talk to you about microdosing and macrodosing on Magick and like which ones you should do and when. So to preface that, I'll give you just a little bit of like what I mean by macrodosing and microdosing, if those are kind of unfamiliar terms. Microdosing is taking a really small amount, usually every day or so many times a day of a drug. A lot of people do that with LSD or psilocybin, or I think some people do microdose cannabis. I don't think that is quite as well known. And the reason that people do that is because taking this small dose that they wouldn't notice an effect, they're not going to be hallucinating, they're not going to be like way out there, is so that because that small dose helps them get into like flow states with work better and just kind of helps things generally go better, kind of like magic. And then a macrodose is when somebody is taking a larger dose of a substance. I am definitely not telling anybody to go out and do drugs because we're actually talking about magic. But, you know, magic and drugs do kind of overlap a lot. And I'll share with you a little bit about my feelings on that as we go through this podcast. But always just, you know, follow your own heart. I'm like this totally crazy Virgo when it comes to drug use. So I never actually used any illegal drugs through my teenage years or 20s. Like ever, honestly. I've never actually done, well, I drank before I was 21. I drank alcohol. But as far as like anything beyond that, I have experimented in recent years, which is funny, but only in like legal context because I have children, run a business. So the only time I'm going to experiment with anything is like if I'm in a place where it is legal for me to do so, like going to Vegas and trying THC, or going to Jamaica and trying psilocybin mushrooms. And I'm all for people doing what works for them. For me, it's always in like a spiritual context of like, how will this affect my meditation, or how will this, like, I'm going into it from a magical perspective. So yeah, I'm not going to dive too deep into that. But what I did want to talk about is that kind of thing of why people macrodose and microdose, and then kind of go on to like why you would want to do that in your magical practice. So one of the reasons that people would take a macrodose is sometimes you can take a dose and have an experience that just changes things for you for the long haul. I know there are people who use a macrodose of psilocybin mushrooms and they do it like once a year. They go somewhere where it's legal, they take them, and it keeps their depression at bay for like a year, and then they go do it again. So it's cheaper and less invasive and all that stuff as far as treatment goes for people who have depression and anxiety. Sometimes for some people it works like that. So it's kind of like people do a microdose for daily focus, daily like small gains on a daily basis. And then people do a macrodose for a big gain, like, you know, big power punch all at once. So if you're looking at magical things, I personally believe that a lot of people, and this probably goes in the drug community, I'm not really a part of the drug community, but a lot of people tend towards, they want to do a macrodose, which is like they want to do a big ritual, they want to do spells, they want to, do like all these big things that are going to change something right now. And there's not anything necessarily wrong with that. But if you're doing microdosing, little bits of magic every day, then you may end up needing less of these big interventions, these big rituals. And I'm not saying that both are good and both can, not that any one person has to choose one over the other. For me, I've noticed, interestingly enough, that sometimes I tend to have the same type of experience from microdosing Magick as I would from doing a macrodose of Magick, just in a kind of a different context. As far as I've done things where I've just, with the premium members, and as I will be mentioning it, but right now it's closed if you're listening now, and the premium membership will open back up in January. But for right now, just kind of telling you a little bit about some of the things that we've done, experiments where every day we've done one thing that takes 5 to 10 minutes. So kind of like a microdose of Magick every day, and kind of seeing what the results are from that every day. And, sometimes that seems like a build-up process, but there's also just like a smoothness to your day when you do some type of magical practice every day. And one of the things that I've been encouraging people to do for at least the past year, because I know that all of our experiments have a physical and a metaphysical or beyond the physical aspect to them. And that's because I, for so long, thought that it was just, if I did my meditations, like everything, I tend to be a more out of body person, if that makes sense. Like I could go to astral realms, I could do things outside of my physical body, either in my mind or, beyond that, metaphysical, beyond the physical, to make things happen. And I was like, why do I need to burn incense? Why do I need to leave offerings? Why do I need to do like physically put together physical things in the world? Why do I need to go pick herbs? Why do I need to make a tincture? And then I started doing those things. Really shout out to Carolyn Elliott for that, because I first took her class Influence. And, if I take a class from somebody, I will try to follow the instructions. And there are instructions in that class of leaving certain offerings. And she was very clear, like, even if this seems like nonsense, just do it every day for the period of this. I think the class was maybe 2 or 3 months. And that changed me. And it changed how I thought about magic. Like I have changed so much in the past 2 years, 2 to 3 years. And it's just interesting because I think I've came back to what I intuitively knew as a child, but got really fearful about some of the stuff that I was doing as a young adult in college, and like thrust it all away for a little while. And then kind of came back to my spirituality after a break of 3 or 4 years. Most of college, I totally ignored it. Like coming into my first year, it was a big part of my life, and I scared myself with some stuff. And so my last 3 years of college and first year out in the real world, quote unquote real world, I eschewed like all kinds of spiritual stuff. Like I gave away my tarot cards. I gave away all of my stuff. So then I felt like I could safely enter in like through the Unity Church, and like I could just focus on the positive, just purely the positive. And that worked for a while. And if that's a starting point for you, just focusing on affirmations and positive prayer and things like that, that's great. For me, I found that I manifested a lot of really cool things in my life. And then things started kind of crumbling apart in certain ways. I mean, to the outsider, it would not look that way, but to my inner soul, it was like, oh, the denial of the shadow is painful. So for the past few years, I've been working more and more with my shadow self, and accepting that, and accepting just like, things that are beautiful as far as like, we all live, we all die, we all go through this life cycle. And if we refuse to look at or think about certain parts, then I just think we miss out on some of the beauty in life and also the growth, right? So I felt like I was really shutting down my own growth by spiritual bypassing, putting a smiley face on everything. And so I got off on a huge tangent here, guys, and I'm really sorry, but yeah. So as I've come back to this thing of like leaving offerings and things that just so strangely that when I was young, I did intuitively and somewhat from learning certain things, but there was no internet. I am that old. Yes, I am. When I was in college and high school, it was not a thing yet. But coming back to that and having that discipline of doing that, it creates these subtle shifts in your energy. And it also, I think, a discipline, like it helps you connect better with any ancestors or spirits that you're working with. It helps you connect. I mean, obviously, if you're leaving offerings and you're like giving them attention, it's, you're developing a relationship just as you do with a friend. If you only call on them once or twice a year when you do some kind of big ritual, then, that's like, I don't talk to anybody. I'm going to invite everybody to this big party, even though I never talk to them all through the year and they don't even know my name. And if you hear barking in the background, I have 2 border collies, Lily and Neo. They are insane. I try to keep them under control, but yeah, that's what happens. So as far as microdosing and macrodosing, if I had to choose one or the other, I would actually say that I think that the microdosing is more important. That's why my blog is called Daily Alchemy, you guys. Even before I started realizing the importance and the relevance of doing some kind of physical, like your body moving, your body lighting incense or lighting a candle or preparing an offering and leaving it out, I've always believed in the power of a daily practice, just small daily steps to improve your whole life. Just from taking these small little magical steps every day. So microdosing to me is hella important when you want to change your life. So I want to give you just a few things that you can do. And personally, I'm a big fan, like I said, of doing at least 2 things, at least one thing metaphysical. And that could just be a meditation, some breathing exercises, a mindful walk, I guess, is kind of physical. And sometimes these things sort of overlap, and that's okay. And I always like to tell people, like, one of the big things is intention. So like if you just sit for 5 minutes and breathe, and then you go light some incense and you think nothing about it, it's a great start, but it's not going to have the impact as if you're like, okay, I'm sitting here for 5 minutes and I'm intending to, connect with source energy during those 5 minutes, or connect with my ancestors, or connect with the peace in my soul, whatever works for you. And then if you're lighting the incense and you're doing that, you're doing this like, this is a gift. This is an offering to the nature spirits who live here. Or this is an offering to my ancestors, or this is an offering, once again, to my own very soul. If you're a person who like doesn't want to work with spirits, doesn't want to work with ancestors and stuff, it doesn't mean that you can't honor your own life force. It doesn't mean you can't honor just the fact, life force and source in general. And sometimes I use the word source. You can use whatever feels good for you. Source, God, the universe, the one, the all that we came from, and I think even atheists can really have success with this kind of work, just because there is something that just happens in the subtle energy, and maybe it is just science. But I can't always give answers as to why things work. I just know that they do. And so, yes, so just do 2 things every day, and you could change them up over time. And later on, when I open things back up, if you want to come in be a premium member, there's lots of things that we do and focus on different things throughout the year to give our attention to for experiments. But just even, lighting a candle, lighting some incense, putting out a bowl of water or a glass of water, and just taking some quiet, short meditation. That's a great microdose, daily microdose. And the thing about it is that you do it daily, right? Then doing a macrodose is something that you would choose to do for a variety of reasons. If you haven't done any Magick in your life, I would say start with microdosing on Magick. Just, 5 minutes to 10 minutes a day, doing these small practices every day. And, I encourage you to keep a journal of what you're doing and just like how you feel over the course of a month of doing that. And then if you're like, yo, I did this, but I've got this situation that I really want to improve, or I just want to stir things up, or I just want more personal growth right now. And that's when you'll want to do like a macrodose of Magick and do some type of ritual or spell or more in-depth thing. And for me, I've done a lot of these in the past, but right now I'm just going to share with you the one that I've recently done. And I'm kind of still working through. I'm using as a basis a book called 7 Spheres. And I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's by Rufus Opus. Okay. Sorry, I had to get the book here. And basically he works with the 7 spheres, the 7 planetary deities, Sun, Moon, Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, Venus, and who did I leave out? Saturn. Oopsie. So, and for me, I had not done a whole lot of macrodosing on Magick recently. Probably the last thing I did major was like 6 months ago. So I decided to do these rituals. I heard about them on a podcast called Charm the Water and got the book. And I really like the Charm the Water podcast too, by the way. So if you're looking for something to listen to where people are doing magic and doing magical experiments as well, it's pretty cool. So I decided to do this because I am in this reboot phase of my life, and I've been kind of cocooning, and things have been hard, and I have been doing a lot of microdosing, and it has really helped, as like I talked in the last episode about like the clover and the clover magic, and to me, like I got some maybe macrodose experiences out of that because I just got so many energy downloads and really cool dreams, basically just from kind of communing with clover on a daily basis and just kind of looking at pictures of clover in my meditation and then having a bit of clover in my clover syrup that I made in my tea every day. So I was not like doing anything elaborate. It was a microdose, a daily alchemy practice, and it's given me like big energy shifts and big downloads of energy. And I tend to be a feeling person rather than a seeing person. So depending on like what senses really activate in you, you may have a whole different experience. But for me, sometimes it's really hard to explain things because I get what I call energy downloads, and it's just like, whoa, man. And then, things happen out in the outer world, things shift and change. So there are 7 rituals here, and I just did the Jupiter ritual last Thursday. So it's been a week and a day. And the evening that I did the Jupiter ritual, it's more of an intense thing. There are preparations and things that you need to get out and set up your ritual space. And for me, I think the whole thing took about an hour, and I ended up doing it outside in our backyard. I do a lot of meditation and spend a lot of magical practice time out there. It just has really good energy, and it's kind of like people will describe it as a little oasis. So I did it at a table kind of out close to my meditation space in the backyard. and it was dark, and it was actually the night of the full moon on a Thursday night in the hour of Jupiter in the evening. And it was the full moon in the night before my birthday. So just felt like really, really potent time, especially like for me, but probably for anybody. And so after I did everything and then I was cleaning up, I came back in, and my oldest daughter, who practices magic as well, in my house, there's my husband. I have a daughter who's 19, twins, boy-girl twins, who are 14, soon to be 15, and my youngest daughter is 13. So my oldest daughter is pretty much a serious practitioner of magic as well. My other two daughters are practice, but not, they're 13 and they're 14. So, they do what they do when they want to. The daily practice thing probably is not real big on their list of to-dos. And my son is more of an atheist, or I would say more agnostic, and he's not really down with a lot of the stuff. And my husband is kind of like, you go do that stuff that brings good things. So there's our spiritual breakdown. So, but my daughter, who does a lot of this work, my oldest daughter, Ren, she's 19. She was home from college, and after I did everything, I was cleaning up, and I came in the house, and she was like, whoa. She knew I was doing the ritual. She's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What did you do? What did you just do? And I was like, I just did this ritual. And, when I was doing it, I could feel just like the energy around our whole yard just shift. And like, once again, really, really hard to put into words, but it's almost like you're like on another plane. And she was like, I don't know what happened. I'm trying to remember what she told me, but I know she told me she had been upstairs doing some homework, and she just got like this energy hit her, and she ended up just like closing her books, laying down on the floor. And there was something else like that she saw, or something that happened, and I can't remember what it was now. Oh my goodness. So I'll need to touch base with her and see. And then the real outcome of this for me, well, that evening I had like just a really, really, I was just like buzzing on Magick. And so it's kind of hard to explain, but I will give you a little detail as far as like, because I'm not a person who normally sees a lot of visions. Sometimes I do, or like sometimes I'll get auditory things, but things for me are just really visceral, like feeling, and just feel like the energies around things. And so for me, it's actually like kind of like taking drugs, I guess. And, I did mention that I went to Jamaica this past summer, and I did do a dose of psilocybin mushrooms. And because I'd never done anything like that before, I started I did 2 grams, and it was really strange for me because it just felt like one of my downloads. Like I was like, well, this is nice and this is pleasant. And obviously I didn't take like a huge macrodose, but I thought maybe it would help me with some of my depression and anxiety. And so I kind of went into it like as a communion with, I did some little prayers and stuff about healing the brain and, connecting with the spirit of the psilocybin mushrooms. And I won't say I was disappointed. I was just like, whoa, I can do this myself. I don't need the drugs. Obviously, people who take the bigger macrodoses and stuff, I don't know that I've had any experience spiritually that would relate to any of that, because I always took a pretty small dose. But for me, I've usually found like, as I've said, I have only experimented. I did that in Las Vegas. I've taken like THC gummies and whatnot. And for me, like the buzz that I get off of things like that or alcohol is like less good than the magical buzz, honestly. But the thing with the magical buzz is, like, most of the time I can't control when it comes. But after I did this ritual, I had the magical buzz all night long, just downloads and like the energy around is just kind of seemed like there's been like a strange energy field, almost pretty much ongoing since I did that ritual. And I've decided to do another one today. Today is a day of Venus, so I'll be doing it later. And I believe my daughter is coming home from college and she is going to do it too. And so like, we're not going to do it at the exact same time. I don't think, because I think I've mapped out that I can do it in the hour of Venus this afternoon before the kids get home. And, you know, if I do a ritual, I like to do it alone while nobody else is home. Like when I did the Jupiter one, I had to do it at night out in my backyard. And I didn't have to do it in my backyard, but just like, I just wanted to be in a space where other people's energies weren't. But I believe my daughter's going to do it like tonight, 10-ish, when the hour of Venus is in the evening. Usually there's like, and I'm so bad with things like this, but I think there's like 3 hours in a day that are ruled by each planet. So I'm interested to see what happens from that. But just as kind of a real world thing, like Jupiter, if you're not familiar with Jupiter, he's kind of like that grandfather energy, that wealthy debonair grandfather who will help you out when you need it, but also give you a kick in the butt when you need it. But Jupiter is usually very like lavish and stuff. And so it's an energy that people work with when they want more abundance in their life, you know, and it's like having that rich grandfather or that rich uncle who's like sitting back there enjoying their scotch and their cigar and tossing some money your way or giving you some connections and things, right? Jupiter is that kind of energy, at least to me, and I think most of the reading I've done. So after doing that, and just kind of really, for me, I like if there's an energetic shift like that, especially if I'm working with the spirit, I'm like, okay, yeah, like what is the real world takeaway? And like sometimes it's not like I don't see it until after. And I found that there was a discussion, an uneasy discussion that I needed to have with somebody that I'd been putting off for like months and months. And I was able to have this discussion. And the reason I was putting it off is because I thought it was going to be unpleasant and I thought there would likely be arguing and fighting. And it just wasn't. And I was like, whoa, I really feel like this ritual helped with that. But as I've said, I've gotten these same and similar downloads without doing a macrodose or a major ritual. I've gotten them just from doing daily practice or like a microdose. And the thing with Magick for me is it's a little bit more unpredictable, at least at this point in my life, as far as if someone takes a macrodose of like a drug or a microdose of a drug, they kind of have an idea of what's going to result, especially after they've done it a few times. But for me with the magical practice, I feel like it's kind of like the universe saying you get what you get when you need it or whatever. I mean, you definitely impact it by spending your time and taking your diligence and doing real world work. But like sometimes I can do a practice for like months and months and months, and then I get like this major download. And sometimes I do something new and I get a major download right then. And like I did that ritual and I got a major download, and I've done others and not really experienced a whole lot. So I think no matter what you do, I would not judge what you see in the moment because effects can come later. And that kind of, this is where those positive thoughts from law of attraction and stuff come in, like believing in your own power, believing in your own worth, believing that your actions and your thoughts and the energy and vibrations that you put out into the world make a difference. So not saying, oh, it didn't work, but also, you know, knowing that things take time sometimes and sometimes they don't. But knowing that, as I like to say always, the magical ingredient is you. And if you're working with other energies, they can be really helpful too. I'm not going to lie. There have been potent energies that I've worked with through the years, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. And that does make a difference. So there you have it. That's kind of my take on microdosing and macrodosing. So just to kind of wrap it up, I'm a big proponent of both. But as I said, I really feel like the most important thing to me personally is that microdose, that daily practice of some kind of magical spiritual practice. But I tend to lack discipline. And it has really helped me on a growth path just to do it as in because sometimes I just I don't want to go fill up and put fresh water on the altar this morning. And doing that as a discipline and checking in with it has been a growth thing for me. So, other people might be just doing a ritual once or twice a year might be their thing, like people who go and do the other. But I don't know. I have a hard time with it. I feel totally cool with saying if you never do a big ritual, you can still have great personal magical growth from taking the time to have a daily practice. But I have a hard time going the other way, and I don't know why. So let me know. Share your wealth of information. What do you think in your personal life, in your experience? If you would like to share any of that with me, and also if you're cool with me sharing it with other people, let me know. But you can email me. You can go to dailyalchemy.com. My email's there. My Facebook, my Twitter, all those things are there that you can send me a message and kind of tell me what you do. As a heads up, I've taken all social media off my phone because I just didn't feel like it was good for my brain. At some point in time, I may put it back on there, but I do check in on social media a couple of times a week. And I'll probably be doing more as I'm launching the 2020 Moon and Magick planner. I don't want to go into a long spiel, but that planner is the bomb because I made it be just what I want. All the places for putting your magical practice notes. And also the great thing is every day has, who it's ruled by, Monday the moon, and so on and so forth on your weekly planner. And then it's done by the 13 moons of the year. So you flip a new page on a new moon rather than the artificially patriarchally imposed 12 months of the year. Yeah. So if you want to check that out, you can go to dailyalchemy.com and you will see on that big homepage, there's a big link to where you can find out more about that. And all right, I did forget to do my blessing going in to the podcast. So I shall just bless us out and say, may we follow our passions, may we be good descendants, may we be future exalted ancestors, and may we live magically in the now. Big hugs, and I will talk to you soon.